Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Jones Chronicles, where we talk about anything and everything. I'm your host, Christina. Today, I want to talk about something that has been a shadow in my life, something I'm finally confronting, although it has been acknowledged by, I feel, the world at large since my adolescence, and that is the fact that I have a very neurodivergent mind. On my journey of self-discovery, the road has a stone in the middle of it that is unturned. If I intend to move past this obstacle, I need to reveal what has been hidden. And that's the thing with autism, ADHD in women is women are really, really, really good at masking these particular traits. Depending on where you are on the spectrum, women are far more accustomed to being undiagnosed or late diagnosed due to a variety of reasons, not really acknowledging that autism or ADHD even exists in women. It was primarily done on little boys. Also, the societal expectations. And then there's a tendency to be misdiagnosed when women on the spectrum do seek help. They are diagnosed with generalized anxiety
Obviously.
or other things such as borderline personality disorder. The research never accounted for that autism in women look a lot different. I was a young child, about 8 or 9 years old, when my mother was approached with the news that I was most likely on the spectrum for ADHD. Several teachers, in fact, brought this to her attention over a couple of years. My mother, being the person that she was, and later explained to me, said that she did not get me help because she thought the medication was only going to make me slow, and thus she didn't feel that it was necessary for me to understand why I operate the way I do. I think a lot of women feel a certain bit of resentment. There was a doctor who explained that, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that does apply. In my case, my mother certainly was fully aware. My tendencies were pretty high in my adolescence. And then it was around the time I was 10 that I started more heavily masking due to her reaction to things like stimming and rocking. They were traits she wanted to beat out of me more so than she wanted to accommodate. I do think that me having any type of diagnosis in her mind reflected badly on her and did not fit the image that she wanted to present to society. Years went by and it was something I simply learned to deal and navigate with, despite the fact that it felt very isolating to see everyone else live their life without this, what feels like to you, this guidebook that they got that you never got in the mail. It wasn't really until the last 6 weeks exploring my own identity, which is something that does happen when you are not diagnosed, that this conversation became more prevalent around not only how I communicate, not only the intellectualization of my emotions, but other symptoms that my therapist started nudging me in the direction of, no, I think you actually need to go for a formal diagnosis. And thus I am in the process of doing so. I meet with because it does require a referral. You can get it through a couple of places online if I wanted to pay $956. I do think that this is part and parcel of why a lot of people are self-diagnosing themselves and not getting the actual diagnosis, because there is a monetary as well as a weight attached to getting diagnosed. However, I must say, even now, I am expressing the fact that I have highly neurodivergent traits, not that I am myself. I actually didn't test that high in ADHD. I tested a lot higher in autism, but I also the autism might be masking my ADHD, which is also very common. Most people do get diagnosed with autism and then later get diagnosed with ADHD. The research does point to there being between 60 and 80% overlap between the two. So it's not actually as uncommon as one would think. I actually wrote this down in my notes 4 weeks ago before I watched listened to, but I watched it because it was on YouTube, a video of someone talking about, they call it all DHD, but that's not an official diagnosis. But they were talking about, one of the guests was talking about how it feels. And he literally said the exact same thing I wrote in my notes 4 weeks ago. It's like autism is the parent to ADHD, and sometimes they're friends, but sometimes they're frenemies. He didn't even say the last part. That was something that I put in my notes because that's how it felt like to me with the hyperactivity that I have going on. I have a lot of energy, but also I don't. I crave routine, I crave structure, but also get very bored if it goes on too long. This shows up, I more readily can identify. Even with my house, though, I like my house a certain way, but sometimes I'll randomly decide, you know what, I'm going to replace this, replace this. Like I bought this table that I really like, and it's been in my living room, and I'm already considering the next table to replace that table. It's that need for novelty and structure at the same time, button heads.
But I wanted to do hood rat stuff for my friend.
I remember Mimi a couple of months ago mentioning, I'm not on social media, so this is a very subjective opinion, that she noticed an increase of people talking about being diagnosed with autism or ADHD. Again, I wasn't there, so I cannot provide really any opinion other than what I could surmise, which is the fact that very often research lags many, many, many years behind anecdotal, observational, clinical work. So it has been something that has been increasingly happen that women who are never even considered because they did not have the same traits as boys to be on any of the spectrum when you take that in consideration is ridiculous. But there may be a lot of people that are now out and diagnosed and are simply looking for their tribe, looking to finally express themselves in a way of, now I understand. That realization means something to people on the spectrum that I think neurotypical people would not understand, especially when they've been living with it for 4+ decades. Sometimes I've seen comments of people being like, I've been 54 or I'm 68 and I'm just now getting a clue to my own identity. Self-diagnosing is not a formal diagnosis. Anyone who has not been formally diagnosed and is presenting themselves like, oh, I have autism or oh, I have ADHD, you do need to be mindful, in my opinion, the same way I'm presenting myself right now without a diagnosis, is that I have high traits of these disorders, but I'm not identifying as the disorder, if that makes sense. And the main reason why is because research does show that everybody has autistic traits. I like the way they put it in this article. Those that have 60 pieces would be said to have broader autism phenotype, and those with 80 or more pieces are diagnosable or diagnosed with the condition. I said disorder, but I really mean condition, because these aren't things that you need to fix. I think that's a huge misunderstanding. I think a lot of people don't even know really what autism and ADHD is. This isn't the knowledge tree, so I'm not going to go into all of the details. I think that it is important to research yourself. people have very outdated ideas of what it means to be autistic. So I do want to actually kind of tell you what it's like for me. And if this feels relatable to you, well, then maybe you should start taking some tests as well and see if this is a conversation you should have with your doctor. Especially if you felt alien, or as I kind of made the analogy earlier of just feeling as if you didn't get the life manual when it comes particularly to interpersonal relationships. Now, there are 3 levels to autism. I continue to test out as ASD1, which was formerly known as Asperger's. They are considered the mild or high functioning type of autistic individual, and thus, they're downplayed because on the outside it looks like they got their shit together. But there are a lot of difficulties that do in fact come, like with everyone else on the spectrum. With them, it's just a different type of challenge. While Asperger's is out of fashion, I do prefer the terminology. With Asperger's, have a average to above average intelligence. Everyone doesn't have an above average intelligence, and strong verbal communication skills. And so they don't think that they require support. But the most support they need is within social interaction, sensory issues, behavioral rigidity. But there are other things that are also commonly associated with Asperger's. The first being superior long-term memory. There are people who try to tell me I am misremembering things, and I let them believe that they are correct. I tend to remember a lot. It's why I can go 1 year without watching a television show and pick it up like it was yesterday. I'm sure that's not a unique talent at all. Other people can do that. But I've noticed certainly, and even other people when I'm talking to them, where I'm like, oh no, you did that with then. And they're like, wait, how did you remember that? That was so long ago. Weaker short-term memory, though, is the exchange, along with slower processing speed. So yeah, I notoriously replace a lot of shit consistently. It happened today. I was transferring my old phone to my new phone, and for some reason that I don't comprehend, because I was in my head, I placed my old phone in a box in my closet, and 2 minutes afterwards, I absolutely did not know where it was. I searched all over the house for about 10 to 15 minutes until I finally came upon it once again. My daughter will say, I got off at 8:30, and I will ask her going out of the car, did you say 8 or 8:30? Now, keep in mind, once again, that Asperger's shows up differently in different people. So there is a nature versus nurture aspect to all of this. So one person with Aspies may look different than someone else. That is very important to know. They may have a lot of characteristics in common, but one person's struggle may not be another person's struggle, and yet they're still under the same diagnosis. I am going to stick primarily with what applies to me. A history of deep thinking leading to painful existential crises or existential OCD, as shown by a history of going from one religion to another, one spiritual movement to another, one group to another, or moving between seemingly opposing groups over time in the search for meaning. But I do live in a consistent state of existential crisis. I think I have about 3 to 4 a week, but not in a depressive manner. What it means to die, like those things don't, where there is a certain amount of fear, it's also a topic I can't avoid.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend, the end.
There is a very pervasive theory that autism means you're good at math and technology and science, but in women, that's actually different. They're usually pretty artistic or creative or into animals and less about the more technical aspect of things, which is why this article that it was written for, saying it's the traits of women, in itself still has very stereotypical traits. So I do have a secondary source that I'm going to be referencing that I think actually, despite it being from someone who self-diagnosed, feels more relatable. Here's one that I think certainly stands out to me. May appear narcissistic, self-centered, egocentric, or caring only about her or himself due to not understanding the unwritten social rules, but is not in fact narcissistic. This was something I really, really, really identified within myself and concerned me for a very long time. So I was very relieved to learn that is not a forthcoming diagnosis on my roster. But certainly the appearance of, due to the rather self-absorbed nature we tend to be, can to the outsider who does not understand narcissism in its depth may end up labeling. Preference for one-on-one social interactions, single close friendships. I've expressed this even to Mimi and Shy. I love having both of them, but having one or the other relieves a lot of the tension of needing to monitor both in any interaction. It's actually rather draining. And I have to stop myself very often from disassociating, especially when the topic gets into small talk. I think there is a misunderstanding of small talk because everyone says small talk is like the weather, which that is including in small talk, but you don't understand. It's the conversation that goes, and my sister was over here and she went over there and then his cousin was over there and he said this and all about this 3 years ago. And that is when all of a sudden my brain will start to float away from my body because it is actually draining to me. It's not something that even comes natural. I can do it, but I can't even keep it up for very long before I start deflating from the energy being taken away. And this is the autism side coming out full force. The ADHD side, well, that wants to actually have the social interaction. It craves the connection, even if it's at the peripheral of said conversations. Preferences for friendships with men, as they are easier to understand than women.
Ain't it the truth?
This is actually a huge revelation. I have always had the best friendships with men. And while I've had a couple of associates, acquaintances here and there over the years, I really never developed any deep relationships with women. It is stated that women with Asperger's tend to have a pretty balanced animus and anima, which is masculine and feminine energy. I don't not engage in my femininity. And mind you, I am reading from just the traits found in Asperger's. It gets a little bit more complicated when you throw in ADHD in there. Need more time away from people than their peers? Yes, you're going to need your solitude. My fortress of solitude is my bedroom. When that door is closed, do not approach. When the door is open, I am welcome for interaction, for social interaction. Of course, being a mom, I have to be flexible with that. And that has been a challenge that I've had to learn. And maybe she's been trained that those interactions kind of have a bit of a timer on them before I am starting to get drained. And I do prefer to have those conversations out in the rest of the house than in my fortress of solitude. social anxiety leading to social phobia, analyzing social interactions where they overthink on a loop. Woof. This one's a biggie. Even this podcast, like a lot of my podcasts, the reason why it's so time consuming is because I have to write scripts. It is sometimes hard to stay on topic if I don't have a script, or it's hard to navigate what I'm thinking. And then I'm thinking about what I just said and whether it applies or how stupid that is. So I'm real time evaluating myself in this type of loop thinking. I'm an INFJ, as you all know. So the NITI loop is real to the 100th power. But yeah, you're thinking about what you said, what you did not say, what you should have said, how you came off. You wonder how you came off. Even if you're having, if the ADHD kicks in and you go to an interaction, you're like, man, I had a lot of fun. As soon as you get home, that autism is going to kick in and it's going to start picking apart like, oh, did I overshare? That's a big one, oversharing, because we tend to overshare. And then we get embarrassed about our oversharing and wonder what people think about us or that we're weird. And you're unable to assess really how people see you. Strong preference to engage in conversation related to their special interests. Honestly, if you get me talking about Amber Troop, I will not shut the fuck up. A strong dislike for social chit chat, gossip, nonsense, lies, or conversation that lacks a function to it. But some are known to engage in it themselves. Because sometimes people will bring something up and I'm like, okay, so what's the purpose of why this is happening? And this is something I've had to learn in motherhood where I ask, are you venting or do you need a problem solve? Because I'm in constant problem solving mode. And if you do not dictate that, hey, I am just venting to you so that I can prepare myself to do what I need to do to adjust my energy levels, so to speak. Yeah, that is something you're probably going to have to tell me. It's not something I'm going to immediately pick up on. If you're just wanting to express yourself, you might get frustrated with me because I'm all like, well, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. You're just like, I'm expressing my feelings. And I'm like, well, what's the point of feelings? There's action that you could be taking. Why not take the action? This actually happened tonight with my daughter. She came in my room. She had like the sad look in her face and she's like, my phone battery keeps dying. It keeps overheating. It's a stupid phone. And my first response is, well, turn it off for 4 hours. You have a tablet. Why don't you just use the tablet and turn it off for 4 hours or maybe for 8 hours and just let it cool down? And maybe that'll fix it. Maybe it won't. But why don't you just try that? But that's not what she wanted. She just wanted to vent about her phone. I think she knows that there's a solution to that issue. Those things are hard for me when people just want to talk about their emotions. I'm like, okay, all right. Gossip is also not a huge. I think I brought this up in the White Lotus, like how it would be really hard for me in the third season with all those friends that were not real friends talking about each other behind each other's back. Like that is the epitome of, if that were to happen, I probably would disengage from a lot of the interaction. It's why I'm very trusted at work, is because I'm known not to gossip. Like people inherently understand they can call my phone, say what they need to say. One, I'll validate them because I've gotten way better at it. And I'll hear what they have to say. And they're also looking for my honest feedback and they know I will deliver it with care, but with a bluntness that other find necessary. But definitely the whatever you tell her, the secret's safe for her because she ain't talking to nobody. And that's not just being antisocial. I am a little bit social at work. At least I play the role of being social at work. I put just enough out there. My boss asked me, like, everybody had weekend plans and everyone said what they were going to do. And I was like, oh, no, just doing my creative canvas stuff. And he's like, what does that mean? Oh, isn't that notoriously private? Yet the ADHD side will overshare the fuck out of everything. Sometimes once it gets into it's a chance to release that beast. An intense dislike of lies. I am not putting myself on a pedestal, but there be shortcuts I could take at work and I start thinking about it Like, it would be so easy. No one even know. And I can't even do it. Has an ability to socialize, however, is unable to do so for long periods of time, suffers from social exhaustion or burnout or a social hangover when socializing too much. And that hangover, it sure can last anywhere from hours to days. Experiences great difficulty with conflict, arguments, being yelled at, fighting, war, or stress. Processing my emotions alone away from a conflict is how I would process conflict. Being in the middle of a conflict and expecting to engage in that conflict, particularly if it's like an argument or there's a lot of emotions involved, that is going to most likely cause me to either shut down or disassociate. Now, I will say in my youth, I certainly had difficulty asserting myself or asking for help or setting boundaries. Yeah, I would say before parenthood, I was not a particularly assertive person, but I have grown into asserting myself after the debacle of not asserting myself. You can only learn that lesson so many times before you start to actually realize that if anything is going to change, it's going to have to change with how I approach things. May need to drink or do drugs to be able to socialize, perform, be with, and or around people. This is the reason why I got into marijuana to begin with. And when I go out to socialize, I very much take my gummy.
I never just the same.
Often bored in social situations or parties and or does not know how to act in social situations. Yeah, I'm just horribly socially awkward. Even when I was trying to record videos for YouTube, I could not abide even looking at myself to see all of the awkwardness. Like it's you feel kind of foreign in your skin. And then when you get around people, you're trying to figure out what and how to be quote unquote normal so that you don't give yourself away as being completely abnormal. May say yes to social events, then later make up an excuse as to why she cannot attend. This goes back into the white line. Often prefers to be engaged in her special interests rather than socializing. This is very true. May be considered the black sheep of the family. This is exactly why I was the scapegoat. If you had the privilege of listening to those two very oversharing personal episodes that I put out, then you would have known that my mother would go around and introduce me as the black sheep of the family. She also called me weird, odd. Later on, she tried to make it a nicer term by saying I'm just a hippie. Another one may feel as if she has to act normal to please others or does not care at all about fitting in. So it's either one or the other. I think I definitely fall into the latter. The stimming behavior, I think, is pretty prevalent on anyone on the spectrum. But you don't need to be on the spectrum to stim. That's a pretty common human behavior. It's just how extreme is it? I had a blanket growing up, and I had this blanket all the way until I was 21 years old. And I used to take it with me in a lot of places. And I would just lay it on my stomach until one of my ex-boyfriends stole it to be spiteful.
Punk ass bitch motherfucker.
Maybe a loner, may have a lack of insight or a lack of social awareness. So in appearance or personal habits, a female with Asperger's may dress comfortably due to sensory issues and practicality. This is very much true. I will find something in one color, and if it fits really well, I will get several things in that color. I don't particularly, there was this really nice top that I wanted, but I could not wear it because of the scratchiness or itchiness of it. If things have tags on them, I can't stand it. I rip off all the tags on all of my clothing. And it wasn't until much later in life that I realized that there is detergent for sensitive skin. And I've been using that, and it's really helped with the irritation. If certain types of fabrics or a softener or anything is on me, I didn't even put this together until much, much later. when at work, when I was working in the office, they had these really bright lights and I would get headaches. And I just thought maybe I was just prone to migraines. It ran in my family. Made sense, right? So I would go to work and I would start wearing sunglasses in the office to avoid the lights. But it turns out this probably had a lot to do with my sensory issues because bright lights will fuck you up. And the lights I have in my house are all rather dull, if you will, for lack of a better word. Will not spend much time on grooming and hair. Hairstyles usually have to be wash and wear. Can be quite happy not grooming at all at times. So this certainly falls in line with my loungewear. I will sit in my pajamas until 6 o'clock. I will wear the same outfits 4 days a week. They're not dirty. And usually I'm taking a shower right before I go to bed, and then I put on my pajamas, and then I just put on my loungewear when I get up the next day. So they're again, that routine and the structure of the routine, very heavy. As far as my hair concerned, yeah, I would say the personal appearance thing, I think that's why I get so weirded out when people are like, she's a baddie. I'm like, doing what? But especially when I was younger, like my sisters and them, they're way different when it comes to the grooming. And I just did not have it. That's what I would say to myself. Oh, I just don't have that. But it never was a priority. I don't want anyone to read that statement and be like, ooh, she nasty. I'm not nasty. I smell good. I got my products and stuff. Like there is a femininity that exists. It's just not in the same realm as a lot of women that I know are invested. Like I keep trying makeup and it is such a pain in my ass because I don't want to, but I also see its benefits when I do apply it. And I don't need a lot of it and I won't use a lot of it. But yeah. Eccentric personality may be reflected in appearance. Asperger's women's are often just considered quirky. Is youthful for her age in looks, dress, behavior, and taste. I actually put out a question on Reddit. Is it weird to be 42 looking at 30-year-olds? Because I seem to be very attracted to 30-year-old men. And as far as the youth in age, I can actually tell a funny story that happened just this week, actually yesterday. We went out to dinner and me and my daughter, really nice place. And at the end of the course, the waitress asked, well, how are we doing the check? Are you guys going to split it? And I threw out this casual comment to my daughter. It'd be funny if she didn't think that we were mother and daughter, because to be fair, she is a lighter than I am. She reflects her father a lot more than she does me, even though she does have my facial features and she has my complete and utter personality. I can reasonably see why people would look at me and her and not automatically assume that we're mother and daughter. But what I was surprised at what the waitress did think. She actually said, oh, I thought you two were friends, two 17-year-olds. And as my mouth got bigger, she's like, oh, or you guys are dating. And that's when I pretty much lost it. Cause I said, well, what the fuck? Turns out Meg, lovely work waitress that she is 43 years old. She was 1 year older than me. And she was floored. She did not believe for 5 seconds that I was 40. I had to show her my ID. She did not believe my age. And when I said that that's my daughter and I'm her mother, she had a really hard time believing that, so much so that she went back to the kitchen and had several people looking out being like, can you believe that she's 42? And they all agreed, like, no, she don't look her age. I've been told that before. I kind of brush it off as just people saying stuff. It doesn't never stick to me. But it turns out, a possible trait of Asperger's. I do think I act younger than I am, especially when I'm in my ADHD phase. Yeah, I'm goofy as shit. Usually a little bit more expressive in face and gesture than male counterparts. May have many androgynous traits despite an outwardly feminine appearance. Thinks of herself as half male, half female. having a well-balanced anima and animus. I think I may have mentioned this earlier. And I think that's true. I do certainly think I have a lot of masculine traits to me. I've always kind of associated with this being a Black female in society, and Black females taking that role in a lot of households. However, it might be a little bit of both. May not have a strong sense of identity and can be very chameleon-like, especially before diagnosis. And this is why I'm getting diagnosed. I think I've become a little too chameleon-like, where I've actually lost a sense of my own identity unless I am absolutely and utterly alone. But then I get into a really strong rumination period where I can go in a lot of directions. Like I kind of am a little trepidatious of what's going to happen once my daughter is out of the household and I have all of this. Like, I've been looking forward to it, but now I realize, like, oh shit, now that it's upon thee, yeah, I probably should figure out who the fuck I am and what I'm actually going to do in that third chapter. May have been diagnosed as autistic or Asperger's when young, or may have been thought of as gifted, shy, sensitive, etc. May also have had obvious or severe learning deficits. So it can go either way. And that's important to note. For me personally, I don't think I would ever consider, okay, let me say this how I want to say it. I don't consider myself a highly intelligent person. And that is because I'm highly aware of all the things that can be learned and how much I do not know. But I am blissfully unaware of how much I am intelligent. So I reviewed my SAT scores recently because that's what my daughter is about to do. So I pulled out the vault. I never actually looked into it, to be quite frank. It had no function for me, if you will. You know, I wasn't going off to college when I graduated. I went to, well, you had a choice in my household. You were either going to work or you were going to go to college. And if you're going to go to college, well, the only college we can afford was community college. So I went to community college. And even then I didn't know what I was doing. It was just more like, well, I have a full-time job, but I can't move out yet. So let's go ahead and go to community college so I can get a skill set so I can get a higher paying job. It was very just a functional type of thing. Back to the topic at hand. I looked at my score and it was 1360. I think I might have brought this up before, but it really had not made an impact on me until I actually looked up what SAT scores are, because I did not know what's a good score and what's a bad score. I passed. That's all I needed to know when I was 18 years old, and I didn't really care otherwise. And I feel like I looked at it before and then I still just kind of was like, okay. And that's how it was in 2002. But looking up my score, 1360, it actually does fall within the 91% percentile nationally. I also took a non-standardized, somewhat trusted, but not anything I'm going to be writing home about, just to give myself a second look, if you will. And I took an IQ test. Now, I think these tests are really subjective. Now, of course, if you ever take any of these tests online that's not done by a professional, you do have to take it with a pinch of salt or a couple of pinches of salt. But if you're curious like myself and you kind of want to give yourself a bit of a baseline, there's the Mensa that you can take. And then and all of this stuff costs money. Just keep in mind. That's why people take the free shit. But the free shit is a bit unreliable. But how unreliable, I think, is rather subjective. So I took the one test that was considered the most reliable after the Mensa. And on that test, I scored 123. According to the breakdown, that would put me right into the above average or bright category. So that's interesting, but it's not something that at all feels accurate. but I think it also explains why I may struggle a lot with imposter syndrome, because there was no one in a cheerleading me on the side being like, "You're so smart." I've spent a lot of my life, unfortunately, being bullied. My insights being valued, but also devalued in the same breath. Back to the traits though, often musical or artistic. I definitely have my writing that I've gotten really back into. I've taken a break for quite a long time. I think the last time I wrote was when my daughter was born, and then I kind of took on the full role of motherhood. May have a savant skill or strong talents, may have strong interest in computers, games, science, graphic design, inventing things of a technological and visual nature. More verbal thinkers may gravitate towards writing, languages, cultural studies, and psychology. That is pretty evident. And when I talk about anything, I'm usually talking about or putting it through, even watching TV, through the lens of psychology or cultural study. Maybe a self-taught reader, have been hyperlexic as a child and will possess a wide variety of other self-taught skills. Emotionally immature and emotionally sensitive. Anxiety and fear are predominant emotions. Agreed. Strong sensory issues such as sounds, sights, smells, touch, and prone to overload. Less likely to have taste, food, texture issues as males. Although I can. There was something that I was thinking about the other day, and it literally made me visibly recoil. And I was just thinking about something cold in my mouth. Moody and prone to bouts of depression. I don't really deal with depression, or it manifests itself differently into like a crash out. I'd be more prone to crash outs than anything else, although no one will ever see it. Probably given several different prescriptions to treat symptoms. Yeah, I was given anxiety medication that did not at all help. If anything, it really gave me brain zaps. And I have felt much better off the medication than I ever did on the medication. Words and actions are often misunderstood by others.
I hate it here. I want to go home.
I think this is one of the most hurtful things, is when you are believing yourself to be expressing yourself in a manner that could be understood, and it's often misunderstood. And it's usually in a negative aspect. You are trying much harder to understand people than people will ever try to understand you. You can be perceived to be cold-natured, cold-hearted, unfriendly, self-centered. We already addressed that one earlier. It's not even so much self-centered. It's just that you are consistent. Well, I guess that is the point of self-centered. I recently brought this up with my boss, which it's actually kind of funny that my new boss has ADHD. And the first thing that he picked up on me was this fact that I wasn't very friendly. And I had to explain to him that no, I'm friendly, but it's going to take you a minute. It's going to take me a minute to warm up to you. Additionally, there was a change that just happened, and I'm going to need some time to wrap myself around that change, because although I'm saying I'm fine, I'm kind of not fine. It really bothers me a lot more than other people that I just lost my previous boss. I got used to him. He got used to me. We understood each other. And now I have to do a lot more work to build this rapport with you. And it's not personal. It's just, we don't like to be put out of what we are expecting. Can become shy or mute. I think certainly if the conversation becomes too overwhelming or we don't know how to get in there, we can kind of just be mute. And people perceive that as, oh, she's just shy or she's antisocial. Man, I've heard that my entire life. And it's not really antisocial. It's an inability to understand how to navigate, especially if it goes off the script that we often end up rehearsing. Sometimes we'll rehearse conversations days or hours beforehand. We anticipate how people are going to react. But more importantly, we kind of set up how we're going to respond. So when things go out the window or past the capacity of which we are prepared ourselves, then we can feel overwhelmed in that moment, and people will perceive that as antisocial or unfriendly. I should also mention, even though you probably will not hear it because I would have edited it out, at least for me, while I have a very expressive vocabulary, sometimes talking, and that is the ADHD brain taking over, it's like the words are trying to come out, but they're fighting each other to come out because everything's moving so quickly. So you have like the moments where you need to process things quickly, and the other moments where I garble a lot of my words, even though I know what I mean. And when you're dealing with particularly highly selfish or possibly narcissistic individuals, or even highly emotionally immature individuals, highly insecure individuals, they will take that garbledness of the way in which you communicate as a way to undermine your intelligence, which I've noticed is a trend, unfortunately, with a couple of people that I know very well. And while I may not call them out on that, I'm aware of it. There's a lot of shit I'm aware of that if people only knew. But if you're an empathetic person that tries to meet people where they are at, you often kind of give them space to be better people, and you can also understand where they're coming from, but it does not at all take away from the toll that often takes on myself as the individual that chooses peace over conflict. I guess that kind of goes into the people pleasing aspect of it. But for me, particularly, because I know I can say no when I want to say no, I think it falls more back to a traumatic response of fawning. Like her male counterpart, will shut down in social interactions. I think I already read that one. Doesn't go out much. Will prefer to go out with a partner only or children if she has them. Will not have many girlfriends and will not do girly things like shopping with them or have get-togethers to hang out. I do not like people coming over my house. Like, you have to be so fucking special to get into my door. I have to really like you. My daughter wants to go to the mall all the time, and every time she goes in there, I'm like, so I'm going to be in this corner where the least is going on, and I'm probably going to be zoned in on something else that makes me comfortable here because I do not enjoy this activity. I don't enjoy shopping. I do most of my shopping online. So Amazon has me for life, for better or worse, because I fundamentally do not like the idea of going into a store. They're so fucking big and you have to look through everything. It's just tedious to me. Absolutely and utterly tedious. I do not find any joy in shopping. Having a little bit of hangout, get together, like a dinner or something, that's fine. But if you're like, let's go get our nails done and then get our hair done, then let's have a spa day, I'm probably, even if I go and agree, maybe even have a good time, it's not on my to-do list. I'm not going to ask for another day for us to do it. I'll be doing it for the sake of friendship. What's some other things that I want to add? Unable to fully relax. You constantly are in this state of tension when you have high autistic or ADHD traits. You're in this push and pull all the time. You have this suppressed hyperactivity. So that's if you're masking and you're the parent, the autism is the parent to the ADHD child, you're always needing to kind of suppress that hyperactivity. But it's still happening in the brain, which is what causes the anxiety. Forgetting shit when you walk into a room. Forgetting shit in general. This is a big one. I already told you before about misplacing things, but yeah, I will walk into one room and another room, and then I'll come back and I'll walk back in it. And my daughter will sometimes stop me like, well, what are you here for? What do you need? What was it? But I will come back into a room, go out, come back, go back out, realize what I need, walk back into that room, and sometimes forget what I was there, especially if I am distracted in the meantime. I think this one is an important detail. We have a low tolerance. Anyone with these traits have a low tolerance to nonsense, drama, or inauthentic behavior. We can spot it instantaneously, and it very much turns us off, even if we do not outwardly acknowledge that. Like when some people are talking like that shit, my face, I do think sometimes does give me away without me needing to. The worst type of people to me are the people that always got something bad going on, or people who have a negative bias. Like every time you talk to them, it's shit. Life is shit. My struggles, my woes, the victimhood. It's like, that's your life every day on a consistent basis. Then that's not an energy I can even be around. They're like, we call those energy vampires. There is this idea that women on the spectrum for autism don't have a lot of friendships or cannot maintain the friendships. People with ADHD and autism cannot maintain friendships because sometimes you want to talk to them, but maybe I need to talk to you in like 3 more weeks. It's not my preference to go on, and I love Mimi, I love Shy, I love Parthenia, but it's not my preference to go on Instagram every day because that's the only social media platform that I'm subscribed, that we're all 3 subscribed to, and look at all of the memes or engage in any manner. Like I can go 2 to 3 weeks without talking to anybody and be perfectly fine. But I know that to maintain the connection, I do need to be involved, but that's the masking behavior. It's not my default. If I had a default and I just not lived into the masking behavior, well, yeah, I probably want to touch in maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe some months. I have a friend right now. One of my best friends is Bruce Diamond, and we may speak about 2 to 3 times a year. That's it. And I have known him since I was 10 years old. This podcast is pretty long, so I'm going to run through a couple of more of these. Contradictorily by nature, consistently inconsistent. I love that phrasing. One of the bigger challenges, if you are on the spectrum, if you have Asperger's and ADHD, is this wanting something bigger but unable to achieve or sustain it. Stress actually does help us achieve things. When I'm the most stressed, when you give me 9 or 15 exposures on a Monday, well, I go into a hyper focus mode and I'm able to take care of it. Now, of course, my ADHD brain, with those traits of ADHD, let me clarify that will sometimes get distracted or bored. The person who has Asperger traits and ADHD traits is someone that has a story of shattered dreams, passion, and adverseness. You have the qualities to achieve things, but you are fundamentally unable to. And you're left with this feeling of understanding your potential, but not able to claim your potential. I can kind of go on and on and on about the topic at hand, but as I stated earlier, this podcast is long enough. So if you are someone who believes that they may be on the spectrum, or someone who's been diagnosed, and you have thoughts and opinions, blackgirlcouch@gmail.com. My social media will be below. Like, share, subscribe. If I got anything wrong, certainly let me know. I'm still learning in this journey as well. And this won't be the first time. I know I crammed a lot in, but this won't be the first time that, I explore and talk about more, particularly if I am, in fact, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to be diagnosed as, kind of opening up about this narrative that I don't feel is as talked about on a more human basis than just on a topical one. Until next time, peace, hair grease, black or magic.